Professor Weinfeld of McGill University suggests that we must engage in dialogue with everyone who claims to be a leader, even those leaders who say, I'm a leader, take me to my followers. You know, these are difficult questions. We can't avoid them. But if dialogue is going to be sustained, and if our dialogue is going to be sustaining, it will involve a radical paradigm shift in how dialogue. We need to re-examine our vehicles of dialogue. You know, the media, for example, often appear to be engaged in debate and discussion. Frequently, however, we're actually being presented with opinion and attitude. Fascinating watching election campaigns and seeing how candidates are portrayed. Boy, it depends the angle. Depends on so many things. You know what I'm talking about. Many daytime TV discussion shows, many conversations in the new reality TV craze, Big Brother, Fame Academy, X Factor, American Idol. They all seem to be objective discussions, but the mechanics of media rhetoric are familiar to any first-year media studies student. You can steer an argument by selective interviewing, by tuning your audience, by skillful editing, even by choice of camera angle. Television only sometimes conducts objective debate. Part of sustaining dialogue involves scrutinizing this and other vehicles of dialogue. In this context, finally, I was in Atlanta at a conference with Sunita, and even during that conference, American businessman who runs a real estate company in Flagstaff, Arizona, and has a passion for peace and reconciliation in the Middle East, said to me, I've just been invited to this conference on understanding, and it's going to be held in, I think he said, Turkey. And, you know, help me, Ram. I don't want to waste my time. How can you achieve understanding? Now, the point is, if we can't laugh at ourselves, and here's a vehicle of dialogue. This is a vehicle of dialogue. It's a new way. And in Atlanta, the talk of the you know, with the American elections going on, and when Palin became a candidate, and suddenly the media all exploded in Europe, certainly, and the Times newspaper had this fascinating cartoon, and I was thinking about cartoons as a vehicle of dialogue. I only wish I was able to scan it, but it was the day we were leaving. But you can imagine a picture of, this is a cartoon picture, and you can try and imagine Sandra Palin almost, well, in fact, I can tell you, the cartoon, they showed her with a machine gun covering the bottom half of her body, so that she was, you know, there was no sort of any kind of indecent exposure, totally without any clothes, a lipstick in the form of a missile being fired, and a trophy of an animal, you know, that had been shot and stuffed, and that picture obviously communicated. Now, I know it's a monologue because it came at the reader, at the viewer, but there was a communication going on. Now, of course, that kind of is accepted and acceptable, but now think back to the Danish newspaper that published offensive pictures of the Prophet. Those cartoons, the reaction across the globe. What does dialogue mean? And we are creating new vehicles of dialogue within this context. How do you sustain dialogue in this kind of situation? Final point. The need to educate the whole of society on citizenship. This whole issue of citizenship is something very close to my heart, and it's an area which I have been working on in the United Kingdom. My trip to Toronto was of the citizenship thing. We went to Israel. Let me tell you, it was fascinating when I visited Israel. We went with our Minister for Immigration. The Israeli government produced the Minister for Absorption. You know, and but having visited Israel and actually seen the issues there, I could understand where she was coming from, where they were coming from. 1.5 million Russian immigrants absorbed into that society so that they integrate. There were all kinds of issues raised about, can they have their own TV channels? You know, how will they? And in fact, my son, who was at Oxford at the time and was doing his degree in Russian and linguistics, chose Israel as his place of study. And he went and worked amongst a Russian diaspora community to see their issues and the differences between that and then his trip to St. Petersburg, where he also went and looked at Russian and linguistics there. And I was was fascinated by his feedback in the differences, the nuances, the challenges. Our society is certainly all over the world. I mean, it's in the United States, it's in Europe. We are at a very, very fragile position. The multicultural pressures are so strong that people are questioning and challenging whether you can sustain dialogue with such huge differences between communities. There's a whole bit of the talk that I prepared for a one-hour lecture, but I'm going to condense that. The terms like respect and accommodation. What does mutual accommodation mean? When you have somebody, this was in Canada, the professor, not Professor Weinfeld, somebody else spoke from the platform, didn't refer to any of the tensions. We then went and had lunch, and he said, "Hey man, I got this issue. One family has arrived in our little village. They are insisting on faith teaching for their child and at that school. And that's what they want, and they're insisting on that right. We can't afford it. Our taxes don't cover that kind of thing. What does mutual accommodation mean in that context? Where do you draw the line?" And all sorts of issues. In England, I serve on the board of a hospital. I served on it for 8 years. And I just thank God that our hospital didn't have to face the situation of someone who had come with female mutilation, genital mutilation, as part of the initiation ceremony. Technically in law, it's assault. Who's going to prosecute? Who's going to dare to? Where do you draw the line? How do you handle those issues in today's society? Such strategies cannot be left to happen by default. Also, the absence of visible conflict is taken to mean the presence of an illusory peace. I shared with you my family's departure from South Asia. It always plays in my mind. Surely my mom, dad, grandparents, their great-grandparents must have lived side by side, Hindu and Muslim, for generations. What happened on one day that the next morning when they got up, they started killing each other? What happened in Rwanda? What happened in Bosnia? What's happened in Kosovo? At night. It's not that far. I tell you, I was watching the news after your own house. You watch retakes of Hurricane Katrina in the aftermath and how local neighbors, local communities responded and how they handle that. These we cannot take for granted. The same thing happened in East Africa. I stayed in that community. I was born 16 years of lovely, peaceful existence, and then gone. London's your home. It's the 2nd of January. It's freezing cold. Get used to it, boy. And it's kind of a thing that really troubles my mind in terms of what can we do? How can we have sustaining dialogue? My time is up, and really, I would just want to conclude with something that Os Guinness said. Os Guinness is a good friend who lives in Washington, and he's an English commentator, but now living in Washington. When he was writing about 9/11, he said that there is a difference between being in America and being an American. See, in Britain, many have British citizenship, feel that they belong elsewhere. And it's this issue of citizenship, the leap from citizenship to belonging is a large one. And to achieve it and sustain it, dialogue, I concur, I state, with all my heart, is going to be indispensable. I will stop there because I've gone way over my time. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.